to CivilNet. My guest is Vahan Kololian, a Canadian-Armenian businessman who is here in a special capacity. He is founder and chairman of the Mosaic Institute, and we're going to talk about this new kind of institution. Vahan, welcome to CivilNet.
Thank you. Great to be here, Salpi.
Thank you. You know, I think that the diaspora has come to a place where people like you, who in the past might have said, you know, I've done my thing, I'm committed to the Armenian future, I think I'll establish a school, or, you know, maybe I'll help a cultural center, or maybe I'll publish a book or two. Now, there are a few around the world, not many, people like you who have said, I have an Armenian agenda, but I'm going to try to implement it a new and different way. Is that a fair answer to the Mosaic Institute?
That's a very accurate answer in the context of Armenian issues. But the Mosaic Institute is a Canadian organization, and we try to bring forward issues surrounding ethnic communities in Canada.
And Canada's the right place for
and
that.
Right
That's the multicultural
exactly.
capital of the world.
Ethnic communities in Canada whose homelands have conflict. So, for example, we deal with issues between the Indian community and the Pakistani community, the Sri Lankan community, which is split between Tamils and Sinhalese. And of course, something which speaks to me, between Turkey and Armenia and / Azerbaijan.
And do you find, and first of all, these are all communities that have diasporas in Canada.
Exactly. We derive our strength, our mandate, our legitimacy from diaspora communities in Canada. And Toronto, where we're headquartered, as you well know, it has 200 languages are spoken in Toronto. So it's a perfect crucible for these kinds of debates, these kinds of dialogue sessions. And we bring these communities together not to develop dialogue in and of itself. We have two objectives. The first objective is to break down barriers in Canada. For example, the Turkish Canadian community and the Armenian Canadian community have virtually no relations. So we bring them together, and we do it semi-officially. We invite the ambassadors of both countries. We invite a member of the Foreign Affairs Department of the Government of Canada. So the event takes on a semi-official authority. As you know, there's something called Track 1 diplomacy and Track 2 diplomacy. We call ours Track 1.5.
You know, they say that often diaspora communities, and not just Armenians obviously, are much more intransigent, much more extreme nationalist, much less willing to go to the compromises that any of these conflicts demand. Do you find that to be true?
Unfortunately, that's very true. And as you analyze it, I think it's easy to understand why. Because the diaspora communities have typically come to Canada, whether it's Canada, US, Australia, wherever it might be, and they have brought those issues, those conflicts with them, for one thing. The other thing is that we are, on a relative basis, compared to the homeland communities, whether it's Armenia or whether it's India, whether it's Sri Lanka, or whether it's Arab Israel territories, we're living in relative comfort. We're not in the conflict ourselves. We're living in Canada, which is peaceful. So we have the luxury of digging in our heels and saying no. And that's what we're trying to break down. We're trying to break down the fact that as diaspora members of our ethnicities, in my case Armenian, we owe it to our country to soften our positions, to at least listen and at least support the official positions of our country.
Especially since when you're not living in your country, you have the benefit, the opportunity to dialogue with these other country reps and nationals. I mean, here you have to cross a border to talk to somebody. Exactly. There you're down the street.
Down the street, exactly. And we're trying to take advantage of that. And as you know, Ottawa is the capital of Canada, and the embassies are in Ottawa, but some countries have consulates in Toronto. So we try to take advantage of these things, and we've even had some success with the Arab-Israel, Arab-Jewish dialogue sessions. And when you tell a Canadian Jew that opinion polls in Israel support giving up territory for peace, they refuse to believe it. They say, no, here are the polls. They were done in Israel by international entities. So you're quite right. The diaspora communities tend to be intransigent, and that's one of the things we're working on.
Do you find that the other the representatives of the other groups, whether they're academics or activists, welcome this kind of mishmash or mix of various groups, or do people like hanging on to the fact that this is my issue, it's different from everybody else's issue, go away?
This is a related issue to your earlier question, that, intransigence. We find that, I mean, it's kind of, I guess it's human nature. And I try not to spend too much time on this last issue because, it's tough to convince someone that their tragedy is the same as ours. People talk in terms of the genocide, but if you were to say that it was as horrific as the Holocaust, you run into problems. So I'd rather not get into that because it doesn't lead us anywhere.
So how do you engage the representatives of all these groups to understand that they have a stake in this kind of initiative?
Well, let me take the Armenia-Turkey situation as an example, given that it's the closest one to us. We bring together the two communities in Canada. We've done it through universities. We have university chapters now, U of Mosaic. So the students, the Turkish Canadian students, the Armenian Canadian students, they run the sessions themselves under our umbrella. So what's our approach? We bring experts. We're bringing, for example, Can Soyak, who is the co-chairman of the Turkish Business Development Council, to speak to both.
Turkish-Armenian Business Development.
Turkish-Armenian Business Development Council, to speak to both groups. And the proposition he's going to put forward, which I support, is let's open the border. We can talk about acknowledging the genocide or getting the Turks to acknowledge the genocide for another 10, 20 years. Eventually, I believe, this is a personal belief, they will acknowledge it. But I don't want to wait 20 years in order to have trade, in order to have prosperity in border regions. And therefore, lots of countries have current day problems, but they don't close borders. So our point of attack is let's deal with the modern day problems today, and then when borders, either real or imaginary, fall down, then it could improve the impression across both sides.
Does the Mosaic Institute imagine that it might have a role here in Armenia?
Well, in terms of your foreign relations, in terms of helping to normalize relations between Turkey and Azerbaijan, yes, we do. And that's what we're working on. So we, in fact, have a dialogue session, 3 series part sessions, starting in November, in U of Mosaic in Toronto. And as I've said, one of the speakers is Can Soyak. So, and we intend to share that. It's not a dialogue session behind closed doors. So we will again invite the ambassadors and then seek to influence some of the dialogue that's happening here in the homeland.
But you're also, you've also initiated an interesting study that is being done here in Armenia.
Correct.
Timely.
Yeah, I hope it is timely, and we're very excited about the process we've undertaken. Myself and my family, this is outside of the Mosaic Institute. It's, we as a family are financially supporting 5 study groups, 5 research groups from the universities and think tanks here in Yerevan. And the question they are studying is demographics and population decline of Armenia. We're all worried about the decline of population of Armenia. We all have views as to why it's happening, but we felt that it was important to do proper academic research, fact-based, data-based, and come forward with the reasons for these reduction in population, and then come up with policy suggestions on how to counteract it. So I'm here actually meeting with those 5 groups, and the youth and the excitement around it is palpable, and we're hoping to release it in the new year.
Well, we don't often ask why in Armenia, so it's a good thing you're asking it, and we all look forward to the results.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I've been speaking with Vahan Kololian, chairman, founder of the Mosaic Institute, Canadian-based, looking to help solve the problems that we talk about every day. Thank you for watching CivilNet.